Have you ever felt this strange pull inside you? Part of you knows you need a change. Maybe it's leaving a job that drains you. Maybe it's ending a relationship that no longer fits. Maybe it's finally starting that dream project you've been imagining for years. And yet, you stay. You hesitate. You postpone. You tell yourself, it's not the right time. I'm not ready yet. Maybe next year. On the outside, it looks like procrastination. But on the inside, it's something deeper, fear. Change, even when we want it, feels terrifying. There's a voice in the back of your head that whispers, what if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I lose what I already have? And so, even though growth calls you forward, fear pulls you back. This is one of the great paradoxes of being human. We crave growth, but we cling to the familiar. We want to get healthier, but we resist changing our habits. We want fulfilling relationships, but we avoid leaving the ones that drain us. We want freedom, but we stick to jobs that cage us. The truth is, everyone feels fear of change. You are not weak for feeling it. You are not broken for hesitating. Fear of change is part of being human. But here's the key. Fear of change doesn't mean you shouldn't change. It simply means you're stepping into something that matters. In this video, we're going to explore why change feels so scary in the first place. The hidden costs of resisting it. The ways fear of change shows up in daily life. And most importantly, how you can begin moving through fear into growth. Because fear of change is not a stop sign. It's a doorway. Why change feels scary. If you've ever wondered, why is this so hard for me? Why can't I just do it? Let's pause and really unpack it. Fear of change isn't weakness. It's not laziness. It's your brain doing what it was designed to do, keep you safe. 1. The brain is wired for safety, not happiness. Your brain's number one job is not to make you happy. It's to keep you alive. For thousands of years, our ancestors survived by being cautious. They avoided the unknown because the unknown could mean predators, famine, or danger. Today, the dangers are different. It's not lions or poisonous plants. It's uncertainty about your future, your finances, your relationships. But your brain reacts the same way. If I stay in what I know, I'm safe. If I step into the unknown, I might get hurt. This is why the familiar feels comfortable, even when it's painful. A job you hate feels safer than the unknown of starting over. A relationship that's unhealthy feels safer than being alone. 2. Homeostasis. The pull of the comfort zone. Biologists call it homeostasis, the tendency of systems to stay stable, to resist change. Your body does this with temperature, heart rate, blood sugar. But your mind does it too. It pulls you back to what feels normal. Even if normal is unfulfilling, it feels predictable. Predictability feels safe. This is why the comfort zone is so seductive. It's not that it's actually comfortable. It's that it's familiar. 3. Uncertainty equals potential threat. At the core of fear of change is uncertainty. What if I fail? What if I regret it? What if people judge me? Your brain hates uncertainty because it can't predict the outcome. And when it can't predict, it assumes danger. Think about it. If you're walking through a dark forest and you hear a sound, your brain doesn't assume probably just a squirrel. It assumes danger, because that assumption kept our ancestors alive. In the same way, when you think about changing careers, moving cities, or starting something new, your brain assumes the worst-case scenario. 4. Loss aversion. We fear losing more than we value gaining. Psychologists call this loss aversion. We fear losing what we already have far more than we value gaining something new. Example, imagine you're offered a chance to flip a coin. If it's heads, you win $100. If it's tails, you lose $100. Most people won't take the bet. Even though logically, the gain and loss are equal, the pain of losing feels stronger than the pleasure of winning. Now apply that to life. Leaving a job means risking the loss of stability, salary, identity, Even if you could gain freedom, fulfillment, and growth, the loss feels heavier. 5. Identity attachment. Who am I if I change? Change isn't just about behavior. It's about identity. If you've always been the dependable employee, who are you if you quit your job to start your own business? If you've always been the strong one, who are you if you ask for help? If you've always been the quiet one, who are you if you start speaking up? Change threatens the story we've told ourselves about who we are. And identity is one of the strongest anchors of human behavior. So resisting change isn't just about fear of failure. It's about fear of becoming someone unfamiliar, even to yourself. 6. Real life stories. Let's ground this in some real stories. Story 1. The stable job. Michael had worked in finance for 10 years. On paper, he was successful, good salary, stable career. But inside, he felt empty. He wanted to do something creative, design, writing, something that lit him up. Every time he thought about leaving, fear took over. What if I can't support my family? What if I'm not actually talented enough? What if I regret giving up stability? So year after year, he stayed. Not because he loved his job, but because change felt scarier than staying stuck. Story 2. Avoiding therapy. Laura struggled with anxiety for years. Her friends encouraged her to try therapy. But she resisted. Not because she didn't want to feel better, but because she was afraid. What if therapy changes me and I don't like who I become? What if it uncovers things I don't want to face? For her, staying in familiar anxiety felt safer than the unknown of healing. 7. The paradox. And this is the paradox. We fear change because it feels dangerous. But staying the same also hurts. Staying in a job you hate hurts. Staying in a relationship that doesn't fit hurts. Staying small when you crave growth hurts. So we face a choice, the pain of change, or the pain of staying the same. And here's the truth, only one of those leads to growth. The hidden costs of resisting change. On the surface, resisting change feels safe. You stay in the familiar. You avoid the unknown. You convince yourself, at least here, I know what to expect. But what we often forget is that resisting change carries its own heavy costs. Staying stuck isn't neutral. It drains you in ways you may not even notice until years have passed. Let's look at what those hidden costs really are. 1. Stagnation. Stuck in unfulfilling patterns. When you resist change, you stay in the same patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve you. It's like walking in circles on the same patch of ground. At first it feels fine, maybe even comfortable. But eventually you realize you haven't gone anywhere. You stay in a job that doesn't challenge you. You stay in a relationship that's no longer alive. You keep habits that drain your energy. The result is stagnation. Life feels flat, dull, repetitive. You're alive, but not fully living. 2. Regret. Of what if. One of the deepest pains humans carry is the pain of regret. When you resist change, you often wonder, what if? What if I had taken that opportunity? What if I had been brave enough to leave? What if I had tried, instead of holding back? Years later, the regret of never trying hurts more than the fear of failing ever did. Psychologists who study end-of-life reflections often hear the same thing. People don't regret the risks they took nearly as much as the chances they never took. 3. Missed opportunities. Every time you delay change, opportunities pass by. That promotion you didn't apply for. That person you didn't reach out to. That idea you never pursued. Opportunities don't wait forever. And sometimes the window never opens again. Here's the irony. Many people fear change because they don't want to miss out on security. But by staying put, they end up missing out on growth. 4. Emotional toll, frustration and self-blame. Resisting change doesn't just keep you stuck externally. It creates an emotional storm internally. You feel frustrated with yourself. You feel restless but paralyzed. You criticize yourself for not moving. It becomes a painful loop. The more you resist change, the more you blame yourself, and the more powerless you feel. This constant self-blame erodes your self-worth. You start believing, maybe I'm just not capable of change. 5. Metaphors that capture it. Sometimes metaphors help us see clearly what's happening. Standing water versus a flowing river. Water that doesn't move becomes stagnant, murky, lifeless. But water that flows stays fresh, alive, nourishing. Resisting change is like standing water, it drains vitality. A bird afraid to leave the cage, the bird feels safe inside the cage. But the safety is also a prison. The wings were made to fly, not to cling to the bars. 6. Story, years lost to fear. Let me share a story. Thomas always dreamed of starting his own cafe. He loved coffee, he loved community, and he had saved enough money to take the leap. But fear held him back. What if it fails? What if I lose my savings? What if I embarrass myself? So he stayed in his corporate job. Each year he told himself, maybe next year, when I'm more ready. 10 years passed. The dream never left, but the opportunity did. His savings went to other things. His energy dwindled. Younger entrepreneurs open the kind of cafe he once imagined. One day he confessed, I don't regret failing. I regret never trying. That's the hidden cost of resisting change. 7. Reflection. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, where am I staying stuck because it feels safer? What opportunities might I be losing by waiting? What ifs might I regret 5, 10, 20 years from now? These aren't easy questions. But facing them is the first step to moving through fear. Because here's the truth, the cost of change is real. But the cost of staying the same is often far greater. So far, we've explored why change feels scary and what it costs us when we resist it. Next, we'll go even deeper, how fear of change actually shows up in daily life. Because sometimes it hides in subtle behaviors, procrastination, perfectionism, over-preparing, that look responsible on the surface but are really fear in disguise. How fear of change shows up in daily life. Fear of change doesn't always shout. It often whispers. It doesn't always show up as I'm terrified of moving forward. More often, it disguises itself as reasonable, even responsible behavior. That's why it's so sneaky. You may not realize you're resisting change. You may think you're just being careful, practical, or thoughtful. Let's look at the subtle ways fear of change hides in daily life. 1. Procrastination disguised as waiting for the right time. How many times have you told yourself, I'll start when things settle down? When I have more money? When I feel ready? This feels like patience, but often it's fear. Because the perfect time rarely comes. Life will always be messy, uncertain, imperfect. Waiting for the right moment is often just a way of postponing the discomfort of change. 2. Over-preparing instead of acting. Preparation is good, up to a point. But there's a line where preparation becomes avoidance. Researching for months before starting. Taking endless courses without applying what you've learned. Buying equipment for a project you never begin. Over-preparation gives you the illusion of progress. But progress only comes from action. 3. Self-sabotage. Sometimes fear of change makes you sabotage opportunities. You finally get an interview for your dream job, but you show up late, unprepared. You meet someone wonderful, but you pick fights because the closeness feels scary. You get invited to share your work, but you procrastinate until the deadline passes. Deep down, it's not that you don't want change. It's that change feels threatening. Sabotage gives you an excuse. I didn't really fail, I just didn't try. 4. Rationalizing. Staying small. Fear is clever. It creates stories that sound wise. I should be grateful for what I have. Other people would love to be in my position. Who am I to want more? Maybe I'm just not meant for that kind of life. Gratitude is powerful. But gratitude should never be used as a cage. You can be grateful for what you have and still want to grow. 5. Social influences. Fear of judgment. Sometimes it's not the change itself we fear. It's what others will think about it. What if my family thinks I'm crazy for leaving this job? What if my friends don't support me? What if people laugh if I fail? Humans are wired for belonging. We fear being judged, excluded, or misunderstood. And so we resist change to avoid rocking the boat. But the cost of living for approval is living out of alignment with yourself. 6. Reflection prompts. Take a moment to reflect. Where in my life am I postponing action, waiting for the perfect time? Where am I preparing endlessly instead of beginning? Where am I rationalizing staying small with excuses that sound wise? Where am I letting fear of judgment hold me back? These questions shine a light on fear's disguises. Naming them is the first step to breaking free. 7. Story. Anna the artist. Anna loved painting. Friends told her she had real talent. She dreamed of sharing her work, maybe even selling it one day. But fear of change kept her stuck. She told herself, I'll start when I'm better. I just need to practice more. So she painted in secret, filling her apartment with canvases no one saw. Years passed. She improved, but she never felt ready. One day, a friend asked, Anna, when will you finally share your art? She laughed nervously and said, when I feel good enough. But the truth was, fear of change was holding her hostage. She wasn't protecting her art. She was protecting herself from the discomfort of growth. 8. The common thread. Procrastination. Over-preparing. Self-sabotage. Rationalizing. Fear of judgment. They all look different on the surface, but underneath they share the same root: fear of change. The fear says, stay here. It's safer. But here is often where your spirit feels stuck. Transition. So now we've seen the hidden faces of fear, how it sneaks into daily life disguised as patience, preparation, or gratitude. In the final section, we'll talk about how to work with this fear. Not by eliminating it, but by moving through it. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is action in the presence of fear. How to work with fear of change. We've seen why change feels scary, what it costs us when we resist, and how it sneaks into our daily lives. Now the big question, what do we actually do about it? You don't overcome fear of change by trying to delete fear. Fear isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature of being human. The key is learning how to move with fear instead of against it. Here are strategies that work. 1. Reframe fear as a signal of importance. Fear doesn't mean don't do it. Fear means this matters. Think about it, we don't feel paralyzed deciding what to eat for breakfast. But we do feel fear when the decision could shape our future. So instead of hearing fear as stop, hear it as pay attention. Fear points to the places where growth is possible. 2. Normalize discomfort. Change feels uncomfortable, not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing it right. Growth requires stretching beyond what's familiar. Stretching always feels uncomfortable. Try telling yourself, this discomfort isn't danger. It's the feeling of growth. Just like sore muscles after a workout aren't a sign of injury, discomfort during change isn't a sign you should stop. 3. Take small steps instead of giant leaps. The brain panics when change feels too big. If you think I have to quit my job tomorrow and start a whole new life, fear will shut you down. But small steps are less threatening. Update your resume. Reach out to one person in the field you're curious about. Take a short course. Each small action lowers fear and builds momentum. 4. Exposure to uncertainty. Your brain learns through exposure. The more you practice being with uncertainty, the less terrifying it becomes. Start with low-stakes experiments. Try a new hobby. Explore a new cafe instead of the usual one. Speak up once in a meeting. These small exposures train your brain to see, uncertainty isn't death. It's manageable. 5. Anchor yourself during transition. Change feels destabilizing. That's why it helps to create anchors, stable routines that ground you while other parts of life shift. Keep a consistent morning ritual. Journal daily. Exercise regularly. Maintain supportive relationships. These anchors remind your nervous system, Not everything is changing. I'm still safe. 6. Focus on courage, not confidence. Many people wait for confidence before making a change. But confidence comes after action, not before. What you really need is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of fear. So don't ask, do I feel confident enough yet? Ask, can I take one courageous step right now? 7. Exercises for working with fear. Here are some practical exercises you can try. A. Fear inventory. Write down every fear you have about a change you want to make. Then sort them. Realistic fears, for example, financial adjustments, new skills needed. Imagine fears, for example, everyone will hate me. I'll fail instantly. Address the realistic fears with plans. Release the imagined fears for what they are, stories, not facts. B. Letter from future self. Imagine yourself 5 years after making the change, fulfilled and thriving. Write a letter back to your current self. What advice would you give? What encouragement? C. Tiny bold step. Pick one action you can take this week that scares you slightly, but doesn't overwhelm you. Then do it. Fear shrinks when faced. D. Gratitude for past changes. List changes you've already survived, moving cities, ending relationships, starting jobs. Remind yourself, I've done this before. I can do it again. 8. Story, Clara's leap. Clara always dreamed of moving abroad. She loved the idea of adventure, but fear stopped her. What if I can't find friends? What if I don't like it? What if I regret leaving my comfort zone? For years, she stayed. Finally, she decided to take one small step, a 6-week trip instead of a permanent move. It was scary, but manageable. During that trip, she realized she was capable. The fear didn't vanish, but she could handle it. A year later, she moved permanently. Her lesson, change became possible when she stopped waiting to feel fearless, and started acting with fear. Let's bring this together. Fear of change is universal. It's not a flaw. It's your brain's way of protecting you. But protecting you from change also means protecting you from growth. The costs of resisting change are high: stagnation, regret, missed opportunities, erosion of confidence. Fear disguises itself as procrastination, over-preparing, rationalizing, and people-pleasing. But here's the truth: fear doesn't mean stop. Fear means you're on the edge of something meaningful. You don't need to feel 100% ready. You don't need to erase fear. You need to take one small courageous step, even with fear in your pocket. Because clarity comes from action. Confidence comes from movement. Growth comes from stepping into the unknown. So I want to leave you with a question. What change have you been postponing because of fear? Write it in the comments. Name it. Because naming it is the first step to facing it. And then, this week, take one small step toward it. Not the whole leap, just one small step. Because your next chapter isn't waiting for fear to vanish. It's waiting for you to begin. And in the next video, we'll explore the psychology of self-worth, learning to value yourself. Because fear of change often hides behind low self-worth. And when you learn to value yourself, change stops being terrifying and starts becoming possible.